You're here to talk about the crisis in democracy, not just in the United States, but also around the world. Let me just take you back to election night 2016, when you said, we have to give him a chance, we have to let him, let him prove himself and lead, talking about then President-elect Trump. Now you say you think you were overly hopeful. Mm-hmm. What precisely about democracy has you worried?
Well, really 5 things. And I started worrying at his inauguration, both because of what he said in his speech, which I thought was defiant, defensive, dystopian. It wasn't a speech to bring together people who had not supported him, but instead it was aimed, as I say in my book, what happened at the white nationalist gut. And then over the course of now 2 years nearly since the election, we have seen him degrading the rule of law. We have seen him delegitimizing our elections. We have seen him spreading corruption, both him personally, his family business, others in his administration. We have seen him also attacking truth and facts, even reason itself, and fundamentally trying to undermine our national unity. So I was hopeful. I wanted to give him a chance. I think every new president deserves a chance, but every month that's gone by, I've become more and more worried about how he governs and how he treats people.
Last night, President Trump had a sort of ceremony for now Justice Kavanaugh at the White House, and he apologized on behalf of the American people for the immense amount of pain and harm that he said that the judge had been put through by this system. What do you make of that? And what message, including the president's mocking of Christine Blasey Ford for her allegations, what message does that send to women? And remember, women went for President Trump in 2016. White women.
White women. All women went for me. And look, white women have been voting against Democratic presidential candidates for decades now. The white vote has only been won twice in the last 60 years, my husband being one of the two, Lyndon Johnson being the other. So it's not a surprise. It's a disappointment, but it's not a surprise. What was done last night in the White House was a political rally. It further undermined the image and integrity of the court. And that troubles me greatly. It saddens me because our judicial system has been viewed as one of the main pillars of our constitutional government. So I don't know how people are going to react to it. I think given our divides, it will pretty much fall predictably between those who are for and those who are against. But the president's been true to form. He has insulted, attacked, demeaned women throughout the campaign, really for many years leading up to the campaign, and he's continued to do that inside the White House.
Kellyanne Conway, the presidential advisor, talked about this process, and she said it looks very much like a vast left-wing conspiracy. It echoes what you said about when your husband was being pursued by the investigations back in the 90s, a vast right-wing conspiracy. First of all, your comment on that mirrored language. And secondly, do you see any way, even a conservative thing who I was speaking of yesterday said the only way to repair America is to try to get back to some civility and to try to make it that even if we have political disagreements, we're not going to war with each other. We're not trying to destroy each other.
Well, certainly I would love to see us return to civility, listening to one another, working out our differences. That is not the Republican Party that exists today, and that is certainly not the administration that we have in power right now. When the Republican Senate denied the right of President Obama to have his nominee for the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland, heard.
I think you even wrote that they stole a justice from the Democratic Party.
I think they did. I mean, to keep a Supreme Court seat open for a year, to deny a distinguished jurist, they could have voted him down. They could have said, well, for ideological reasons, philosophical reasons, we're not going to vote for him. But no, they stonewalled. And that was such a breach of Senate ethics and the constitutional responsibility of the Senate to advise and consent on nominations, that you cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again. But until then, the only thing that the Republicans seem to recognize and respect is strength. And you heard how the Republican members, led by Mitch McConnell, the president, really demeaned the confirmation process, insulted and attacked not only Dr. Ford, but women who were speaking out. You know, look, I remember Republican operatives shutting down the voting in Florida in 2000. I remember the swift boating of John Kerry. I remember the things that even the Republican Party did to John McCain in 2000. I remember what they did to me for 25 years, the falsehoods, the lies, which unfortunately people believe because the Republicans have put a lot of time, money, and effort in promoting them. So when you're dealing with an ideological party that is driven by the lust for power, that is funded by corporate interests who want a government that does its bidding, it's hard. You can be civil, but you can't overcome what they intend to do unless you win elections. And so the answer to everything is to get back to a balance, to get back to what is called regular order. They don't even have committee processes. The idea that they wouldn't seek and obtain all of the written record from Kavanaugh, that they would not have done a full investigation, that is not the way that they treat Democrats. And so unless we win and we say to the people of our country, look, we need to protect the rule of law. We need to protect processes that are in place in the Congress and the government to protect you, to protect what you care about. So this should go both ways, and that's what I'm hoping for.
You talked about the papers and the written rhetoric, and you talked about the Democrats. Well, apparently when Eleanor Kagan was being confirmed, Democrats handed over all her written paper and stuff that she had done for the administration. And there seems to be a sort of a question amongst Democrats. Should we fight dirty and meet them or whoever on the same playing field, or should we, as Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high? Rahm Emanuel, who used to work for your husband, who also worked for President Obama, has remembered President Clinton saying that, you know, Democrats since the Vietnam War have been afraid of using power, have been reluctant to, you know, to be a bit more ruthless. I mean, what is the answer, especially when President Trump says about Al Franken, who was basically pushed out by your party of Senate because of certain allegations, that the Democrats folded like a wet rag. Are you the wet rag party today?
Look, I think that Democrats have a real dilemma. We do believe in making government work. We're not interested in disabling it, cutting taxes so dramatically that it gives you an excuse to raid Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We try to have empathy for the situations people find themselves in. That's why we support universal health care, why we wouldn't deprive people with pre-existing conditions from getting access to health care, and the list goes on. So Democrats come to this current political moment really torn, because on the one hand, we don't want to model bad behavior. We don't want to act like there are no limits to what should be done in a legislative or executive branch. But on the other hand, if we don't get smarter, and I include myself in this, you know, and I did not know the extent to which there was Russian interference. I knew there had been some in my election. I didn't understand the pressures from the right wing, frankly, on Jim Comey that would cause him to interfere in the election to my detriment. Those were things that were almost unimaginable. Who, when setting up a presidential campaign, would say, oh, and don't forget, we have to worry about the Russians manipulating the outcome. We have to worry about the FBI director intervening into it. We have to worry about WikiLeaks, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Russian intelligence. I mean, who would have thought that those were the challenges we face? So we do have to get tougher and smarter and stronger, not cross the line into lying, but there's enough truth and facts that should be more widely known about what these Republicans stand for, whose bidding they are doing, and where Trump really comes from. And at some point, the accumulation of evidence about how Trump and his father manipulated their business, how they, in so many ways, broke, at least the spirit, if not the letter, of tax laws, how he did business with the mafia, how he's indebted to the Russians. At some point, that has to matter, but it won't matter unless Democrats keep driving this message about what's really at stake,